Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is 9 a.m., so let's get this thing started right on the dot. We're going to call to order the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District regular meeting for Tuesday, July 18th. I know many of you are here to attend the meeting, but have many other duties outside of this office or out of this room, so let's get started. Mr. Joe Cameron, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, sir? I think I did it to you last time, but I'll make you do it again. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Cameron. All right. Chief.
Item number 3 is microphone on.
I'm sorry, I'm very sorry. Madam Clerk, can I get a roll call?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman.
I see us all here, I just,
Bob Lucy, Chair.
Here.
Marcia Burke-Bigler, Vice Chair.
Here.
Kitty Jung is absent. Von Harten. Here. Jean Herman.
Here.
Fire Chief Charles Moore.
Here.
Deputy District Attorney David Watts-Fial.
Here.
I'm Nancy Parent, County Clerk. You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now, Chief, public comment.
Mr. Chairman, item number 3 is public comment. Comment heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the Board of Fire Commissioners' agenda. The district will also hear public comment during individual action items with comment limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments are to be made to the Board of Fire Commissioners as a whole. Madam Clerk, is there any public comment?
I have 2 people signed in. First up is Ed Pitchford, and Mr. Pitchford provided a document which I'll distribute to the board, and Mr. Pitchford will be followed by Cliff Lowe.
Good morning, Mr. Pitchford.
Good morning. It's been almost a year since the Puccinelli fire occurred. It was August 2nd of 2016. Since that time, we've attended probably 90% of the board meetings here, and what's frustrating is we never get any feedback from anything we're talking about or suggestions. I've written several suggestions to the board and Chief Moore, and there's absolutely no feedback. The only meeting we had with Chief Moore was in November, and we suggested improvements for the water in Verdi. He indicated that at that time that he had the funds and he'd look into it, and so far no feedback on that. 3 weeks ago I submitted a plan to you about rain for rent. They'll supply 42,000 gallons of water in tanks to be put in the rural areas with emergency fire hydrants, and that includes dropping the tanks off, filling them with water, and picking them up after the fire season's over. That was 3 weeks ago. Haven't received anything back. And I like this venue where people can get up and express their opinion on the county government, but there needs to be a space in this venue for some kind of feedback, because or just like a mushroom, you just sit there and nothing happens. In overlooking the new budget, I think the priorities are out of line. We need more manpower, not more equipment. We have 4 vehicles sitting in the bay at Station 351. Back in, I think it was March, Chief Moore indicated they're going to put another man at Station 35 to run the tender at Station 351. During the Garson fire, I went by the station and all 4 vehicles were sitting there, and that was 2.5 hours after the power went out. I'm running out of time. I have a suggestion here. I'll put it on here for the public to read and go into the public record. I was told that the font would be big enough for everybody to read, but it looks like it's pretty small.
Thank you, Mr. Pitchford.
Thank you.
Mr. Lowe. Good morning, Mr. Lowe.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and good morning, Commissioners. Yes, for the record, my name is Cliff Lowe. I'm a resident of the southern end of Washoe Valley and have a particular interest in agenda item, where did it go here? Agenda item 5B, which is presented as part of the consent agenda. 5B is discussion and possible approval of a cooperative agreement to include a corresponding annual operating plan between Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District and Carson City Fire Department, which would have could have potentially the biggest effect on the southern parts of Washoe County. And I would respectfully request that that be moved from the consent agenda to the regular agenda for discussion, and I would have my comments at that time. Thank you.
That was all the public comment that was signed in under number 3.
Thank you very much. All right. Chief, we are on to item 4.
Item number 4 is Commissioners' Fire Chief's announcements, requests for information, topics for future agendas, and statements relating to items not on the agenda. No discussion among Commissioners will take place on this item. Just one announcement from me, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to note in consent items on 5C, the cancellation of the regular Board of Fire Commissioners meetings on August 15th. There will be no meeting.
Great. Thank you. Any commissioners? Commissioner Herman?
There it is. Okay. At the BCC meeting this last week, I offered to put $5,000 down on the rent of water tanks for from rent a rain or rain, whatever it is, towards that. And so there, we could get it started and try and get some protection till the end of the fire season this year. So that I'm reiterating that offer. So thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Hartung?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, I know we're going to be talking about Verdi in item 8, so I'll save my requests for that time. But we had a fellow in Spanish Springs go to the fire station for one of the ash cans, and apparently we were out. They've still not contacted him, so could you make sure that ash cans are at every station and that we have a supply of them? And one of the other things that was suggested to me, which I think is a good idea, people may not realize the multiple uses of ash cans. In other words, for oily rags, I myself went and got an ash can for that very reason, and I keep oily rags in it. And I feel much better about it than trying to figure out a bucket and put water in it and et cetera. So the idea was, and I know that we're short on time right now, but at some point maybe we want to create a short video, a DVD perhaps, or put it online on uses of the ash can and proper uses and all the things, not just barbecue, not just fireplace ashes, but the myriad of uses that it can be utilized for to help prevent fires. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Berkeley, do you have anything this morning? All right. And I know we're going to get into this a little bit more in detail later, but first of all, we have quite a few people in the audience today, and I know many of you have been lurking very long hours for the last month and a half, almost 2 months now, and just know that we appreciate you and thank you for all your time. I know I live quite close to quite a few firefighters, both Reno, North Lake, and TMFPD. And I've seen their houses almost be vacant for the last month because they've been on fires, in and out, fighting wildfire season. So once again, this commission and this board appreciates all the time and efforts that you put away from your families and put your lives on hold to fight our wildfires. So thank you very much for that. So with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman.
Yes.
I do think we should pull 5B. In the consent agenda itself, it's non-conforming. It says discussion and possible approval.
I agree with you, and I'd like to pull it in. I'd like to pull it out for discussion.
Thank you.
And have a further discussion, so we will pull 5B. Right now, Chief, I'll let you read through the consent items at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 5B is discussion and possible approval of a cooperative agreement to include corresponding annual operating plan between Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District and Carson City Fire Department.
Okay.
This agreement is fairly consistent with every other mutual aid agreement we have with our regional partners. The way that it operates with Carson City is that Carson City has a close proximity to Franktown and the area south of Bellevue. So the agreement is not just mutual aid, so that if we have an incident where we need to call for a specific incident, it also includes automatic aid, because Carson City can get closer to, or can arrive at about the same time as we can south of Bellevue along Franktown. They bring an engine and also an ALS ambulance to every call. It's predominantly for structure fires and brush fires, the automatic aid response I'm speaking to. I do know that there's also a mutual aid agreement between REMSA and Carson City, and now there's also that same agreement between REMSA and Truckee Meadows. So if we happen to be on a call and REMSA needed us, we can also go to Carson City for an ALS ambulance. So those are really the three parameters. It works very, very well. We often meet Carson City on the county line for incidents that are on one side or the other. But predominantly for structure fires, Carson City automatically sends a structural engine and an advanced life support ambulance when we have a structure fire in certain areas. I'm not able to describe that geographical area, but I think most of you are familiar with those areas that are very close to Carson City.
Absolutely. Commissioner Hartung, further comments?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Chief, does the agreement limit what areas TMF PD and Carson City Fire will respond to the automatic aid? Are we limited? In other words, if we needed their help, let's say somewhere in South Reno, and because we're out doing something else, would one of their units respond for us? Would it extend that far? Or is it
Not the
limited to
automatic
Washoe?
aid provision, Commissioner Hartung, but the mutual aid
The mutual.
provision.
Okay.
So we may call Carson City for any fire that we have, and indeed, we called them for the Cold Springs fire.
Sure.
So the automatic aid portion is built into a run string that the dispatcher has. As that address pops up on their screen, they know then to call Carson City automatically and make a phone call to the Carson City dispatcher. So there's no effort on the part of the incident commander to have to say, send Carson City to this fire. It's being done automatically.
Okay.
So we do that when the areas are in close proximity to Station 52 in Carson.
Are we limited to the number of Carson units that could potentially be dispatched?
We're not limited in the amount of help that we call, but
Okay.
Carson City has limitations on what they're able to send.
Okay.
They have just 3 stations. I know they'll build a 4th soon, but we're not able to call for all 3 engines because that would empty Carson City.
Sure. Okay.
But in the case of the Little Valley Fire, they sent a significant amount of
Yes.
resources and then they backstaffed,
I recall that, yeah.
which is what we do when there's a severe fire somewhere else. We send as much help as may be requested, and we call staff back
Sure.
to staff empty stations.
Are we limited in their area, in terms of Carson City and the surrounding areas, to what we would respond to in automatic aid?
Going back to Carson City, I don't believe that there's any automatic aid provision from TM to Carson City.
Okay.
But I have had discussions with the Carson City Fire Chief now that we're buying a new ambulance for Station 30 Bowers. They often need help when they get very, very busy. They need a 4th ALS ambulance.
Okay.
So I have offered to be able to respond that ambulance into Carson City. As you know, Bowers is not a very busy station. So we have that ALS capability to send to Carson City when they get busy. So when that ambulance arrives, we'll plug that into perhaps automatic aid deployment plan or perhaps just on a mutual aid basis.
I know the agreement exists between Carson and REMSA for transport. Does it limit where they transport to? In other words, it's probably going to be issue specific. If someone requires immediate aid, they're gonna go to the closest facility, which would obviously in District 2, Commissioner Lucy's district, which would be Carson. You know, that's where I would want to be transported. I mean, if something happened out there on 395 South, I'd want to go to Carson City rather than hauling me all the way to Reno.
It depends on the nature of the injury,
call,
and
yeah.
if you'd like, I'll bring Chief Cameron up to describe that if you want more information. But I know that there are certain types of medical conditions where they're better served at Renown than they may be served at Carson.
But are they limited, in other words? That's my question. Are they limited to where they can transport to?
Commissioner Hartung, for the record, Joe Cammon, Division Chief, TM. There's no limitations based on the acuity of the patient.
Okay,
The patients will have the ability to decide where they want to go for non-acute calls.
I see.
If it is a trauma criteria, they will go to the closest facility.
Right.
That's appropriate.
Right, that's what I would hope, that they're not forced
No.
to haul them all the way into Reno.
No, not at all.
Okay, good. And last question, Chief, does the agreement limit how many TMF units are obligated to Carson City? Is there any limit to that?
There's no limitation at all in the agreements. We send what we're able to send.
Good.
And if Carson City were to ask us for 3 engines, we would send 3 engines.
Yeah, that's
we'll
the
figure
way
out.
it should be. And I completely concur. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chief.
Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, I notice in the attachments on this agreement that there are very detailed rates set out in a very detailed fashion. Looks great. I'm just curious, is this similar to what we have with Sparks?
Yes, yes, the rates are all fairly close to all the other agencies.
And do we have something similar with Reno?
We do,
Okay.
and Sparks, and
And all the other agencies?
all the
that
other
we- yeah.
agencies that are local agencies within the Sierra Front Mutual Aid Network.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Great. Madam Clerk, do we have public comment?
We do, Mr. Chair. Cliff Lowe.
Mr. Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Cliff Lowe. I am not here to speak against this agreement. I think agreements of this nature are great. I will, however, say that as a resident of the southern part of the county, I was surprised, not surprised, that there is a mutual aid agreement between Truckee Meadows and Carson City, but I was surprised by the automatic aid portion of it. And interestingly, the agreement defines automatic aid as both parties are automatically dispatched without a specific request. It also makes numerous references to the annual operating plan. I am wondering how, and I'm not looking to have it answered here necessarily, but how the different systems would operate so that there'd be an automatically that both would be dispatched, since if we make a 911 call, at least it's supposed to be going into a Washoe County-based system. I don't know how the folks in Carson City would even be aware that I have a medical emergency, for example, or that my house is on fire, so that there might be some kind of automatic aid and simultaneous dispatch. Another question I noticed, and I don't know, I haven't looked at the other automatic aid agreements, I noticed that it looked to me anyway that the reimbursement rates, that there was quite a discrepancy, that the billing rates from Truckee Meadows were substantially lower than Carson City's. But my concern is not so much financial. My concern, or my interest, I should say, is in how it's actually going to function. I would not want to see this agreement delayed. As I say, I think this agreement, having an agreement of this nature is great, and I'm delighted to see that there is an automatic aid agreement. Those of us in places like Washoe Valley, I think, are concerned about the timeliness of response, especially if the stations that are located there are out on a call, another call. and we have an emergency in the southern part of Washoe County. I don't see that the annual operating plan describes, it doesn't look to be very robust, and it doesn't look to describe the kinds of details that I guess I would have expected in order to explain how it's actually going to function. Personally, what I would like to see is that the agreement get approved, but that the chief or Chief Moore or his representative and the chief from the Carson City Fire Department or his representative get together and put together or revise the annual operating plan to more specifically address these issues, in particular those about automatic aid. But I would like to see the agreement go through because it's automatic aid. The devil can be in the details, but in generally, I think it's people would generally agree that mutual aid and automatic aid are to the benefit of both communities that participate in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. And that leads me to a few other comments, in regards to this discussion with Carson City, and I'd like to see something come back, Chief, in regards to this agreement is the run cards, how those run cards are calculated for maybe a future reading, I'll bring it up later in the meeting, but I think it'd be imperative for this commission to look at how we calculate run cards for many of our districts and how that's dispatched through, especially for automatic aid and mutual aid with other,
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I think Mr. Lowe brings up a very valid point that maybe is something, and I certainly don't want to delay this agreement. I think it's extremely important, but I think it's important for an explanation to be brought back to this board as to why we don't charge an exact amount. Why don't we just, whatever the other entity wants us to pay for their structural engine, we charge them the exact same thing. Why are we so much lower in rate than they are? And I think that we need a more in-depth explanation on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I agree with Commissioner Burke-Bigler, man hour for man hour. Our guys are trained every bit as well. Our equipment is every bit as good. It's, I see no reason for a disparity. So I agree with both Commissioner Burke-Bigler and Mr. Lowe. And also, it would be nice to know does Carson use AVL?
I do not know.
Okay. That may be something, because I know we're trying to move towards that. And if we're part of their system and they're part of our system, I think AVL is obviously the answer to the problem and the question of how do you respond with the closest vehicle.
Commissioner Hartung, I do believe that even if they are on AVL, our dispatchers would not be able to see the location of their engines. Only the dispatching agency for the jurisdiction can see where their engines are. So our dispatchers see ours and Carson City's sees theirs, but it's not across the platform.
Is it because we use two different pieces of software?
No, I think it has more to do with the connectivity between the two dispatch centers, that it's just technically not possible right now.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So no other further discussion currently on item 5B. I'm going to take, looking for a motion this time to accept all consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion by Commissioner Hartung, second by Commissioner Burke-Bigler. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and let the record show Commissioner Jung being absent. I guess I don't need to really do that today. All right. Chief, item 6.
Item 6 is the IFF Local 3895 report.
Mr. Satterfield, it's a pleasure to see you. We haven't seen you in a while.
Good morning. Yeah, Ian Satterfield, President Local 3895 for the record. You are correct. You haven't seen me in a while. And I'll be honest, I'm not quite prepared to give you much, only the fact that pretty much all of Local 3895 is working and busy. I did want to make a mention, though, and a thank to all the families and wives and kids and the sacrifice that they make for the community just as much as we do. I know it's part of our job, but I think that I'm becoming a better counsel person for my wife when I get home. Spend the first couple hours just bringing her off the ledge because she's been dealing with kids for 7 days straight. So With that, we really don't have much going on with 3895. I'm sure as we get into the fall and things slow down, we'll be kicking back up. So unless you have any questions for me, that's all I have.
Commissioners? Madam Vice Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No questions. I just want to thank you guys so much for everything you're doing. And it is true that your families are working as hard as you are. So thank you. You guys are really fabulous. Appreciate your help.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the same for me. Thank you so much. I can see your tan. I'm a
It's
little
only right
jealous
here.
from the farmer tan. Your arms are getting a little tanned as well,
Yeah.
Which is indicative. I know you guys are spending long hours out there. It's hot. You're in heavy equipment and are wearing heavy equipment. It's tough. The only saving grace is lots of overtime.
Yeah.
So that's the good side of it, but we appreciate all the hard work, the professionalism. I know I've talked to some people who have been out there, and the professionalism that all of the agencies have shown to try to protect property and lives, of course, and their animals has been amazing. So thank you so very much to all of you.
Yeah, I'd agree. And it's not just Local 3895. I'd say it's all of the staff.
It's everybody. Yeah,
Everyone's
that's
sacrificed. So
what's been.
my thank you goes out to all of them as well.
Yeah. That's how it was translated to me as well. It's just everybody, no matter who it is.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Herman.
And to you all, hardworking firefighters, District 5 is so grateful. You have done such a wonderful job, and we're just proud as heck of you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Chief, we're on to item 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to table item number 7. We just simply haven't had enough time to put together that presentation due to our response to wildfires.
Okay, so what we'll do is we will pull item 7 from today's agenda and continue it to a future agenda. Let me ask, Mr. DA, do we need to make a motion to table that, or can I do that under my discretion?
Well, if it was going to get tabled, you could make a motion, but really it can just get pulled from the agenda.
Let's just pull it from the agenda for today, and then we'll re-agendize that for a future agenda come later this year. Okay? All right. Chief, we're on to item 8.
Item number 8, Mr. Chairman, is discussion on possible direction to staff and the fire chief report to include following items related to fire district operations for possible action. 1 is an update on recent wildfire activity. 2, an update on Verdi fire protection. And 3, the update on the volunteer program to include TMFPD's support of Gerlach. Before we have members of the Type 2 team here who have done an amazing job in helping suppress the Long Valley fire and also helping us suppress Cold Springs fire and not this particular team, but another Type 2 team helped us suppress the Winnemucca Ranch fire and the Aspen fire. So our assistance from Type 2 teams through the summer has been absolutely invaluable. But before I bring them up and introduce them, I wanted to show you an interesting statistic, and if I could have the graph put up on this. Anecdotally, most of the firefighters know that when we have a wet year, we're going to have a lot of grass. And when we have a lot of grass, we're going to have hot, fast-burning fire. But our anecdotal evidence has been supported by scientific evidence through the National Weather Fire Service. And this graph basically shows that going back to 1980, whenever we have had a wet year, we're followed by 2 years of high acreage that is burned. And it has actually has tracked very, very accurately. So the 1982 and subsequent years, whenever we have had a wet year, we have 2 busy seasons of wildfire activity that follow. Thought that was very interesting. So even though we get through this season, we may very well have yet another bad wildfire season next year. But I wanted to take the opportunity to, again, thank all of our regional partners, the City of Reno, City of Sparks, City of Carson City, East Fork Fire Protection District, Story County, and I don't know where else we had regional responses from. I believe even Truckee, California and maybe even parts beyond that. Lake Tahoe regional chiefs, we had responses come from the north side of the lake from California to assist in certain fires. So it is absolutely worth mentioning the robust and quality mutual aid system that we have up and down the Sierra Front, and even including into Lake Tahoe. When we need help, when we call, we get it, and when they need help, we send it. So with that, I want to especially just say my thanks to all of our regional, our state, Nevada Division of Forestry especially is very, very instrumental in helping us not only respond, but also help fund the extraordinary costs in fighting wildfires. And then our federal partners who bring big assets in the way of lots of people and lots of aircraft. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Chris Fogel, who will introduce the rest of his team. Mr. Fogel is the incident commander on the Type 2 team now fighting the Long Valley Fire, and has been here since that fire broke out shortly thereafter. And he'd like to give the board an operational update on how things are going.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and get you guys a quick briefing on where we sit on the Long Valley Fire. And before I do that, Mike Nobles is my IC trainee. Kevin Klar is my liaison officer, and Kate Kramer is one of my PIOs. So we also have Ralph and Dennis here from BLM local. The fire started on July 11th and burned about 30,000 acres the first two burning periods. My team was ordered up on the 12th. We got up here, got in place, did a transition on the 13th, and then took over the fire on July 14th. Since July 14th, we've had about 8,000 to 10,000 acres a day fire production and run from the Long Valley incident. This was largely due to hot, dry weather. Yesterday and today, there was high wind warnings. The National Weather Service actually issued a potentially dangerous situation, which is usually attached to floods or hurricanes, tornadoes. This was the first time we had seen one attached to a wind event, and it was for the area around the Long Valley Fire. So where we are currently sitting, if you're looking at the map, all the black line has been controlled. The black and red dotted line is where we have direct line on the fire, and we have not seen any progression on there, and we're continuing mop-up efforts. And the red line is where we still have uncontrolled fire line. We have been able to get to a point where the fire is about 40% contained. We are looking at getting full containment lines, pending any weather change or growth from the fire. We're looking at getting direct line around the entire fire in the next 2 shifts. So today's shift and tomorrow's shift. The guys have been working very hard, making very good progress on getting line around the fire. The current size of the fire is 87,733 acres. As I said, 40% contained. 898 personnel are currently assigned to the Long Valley Fire, and the current cost of that fire is $7.8 million. If you can, do you have the other graph? So the next graphic that'll come up is a fire progression map, and the colors will show you the fire growth from one day to the next day. So you can see that on the days that the fire got up and ran, it made quite a bit of progress each day. It took out several thousand acres. That's been the biggest challenge of this incident, has been the amount of growth per day. And we have had very good relations with not only BLM, but the Nevada Department of Forestry. and we've had very good cooperation from Truckee Meadows. We've been staying in constant communication with Chief Pelt from Pyramid Lake Paiute Reservation, and also been working a lot with the Nevada Highway Patrol and Washoe County Sheriffs, and then several of the utility, the county roads, power, gas, and water companies. So to date, we are looking very good. We did not have a lot of smoke in the air yesterday, which is always a positive sign for us, and today was starting out very well also. So we're optimistic that we'll be able to get around the rest of this fire in the next couple days. Any questions?
Madam Vice Chair.
Any idea what started this fire?
I don't know what started. It was still under investigation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hartung?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, and I see it starts right there at the edge of 395, very suspect. And I was going to ask you also, Chief, about the Farad Fire, had they found out about it. I know the Cold Springs Fire was a sparking chain, but you know, these are obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, it seems that they're man-caused, either by accident or someone flicking a cigarette out their window and not realizing just how much damage can actually be done. When will the investigation be complete, Chris? Do you know?
Are you taking the lead on the investigation?
I mean, I know it's impossible to track somebody down, you know, they're long gone, obviously, but it'd be nice to know.
Yeah, so BLM is taking the lead on the investigation. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you,
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Herman, any comments? Okay.
Another thank you from our bottom of our hearts.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate all the information. Thank you. Chief?
I would just like to add a special thanks again. I think I mentioned it before, but also just thank the Type 2 team. Been very gracious to us, and their assets that they brought to the table were also instrumental in suppressing the Cold Springs fire. So that was a very, very close call for us. Had we not had the air resources from the Type 2 team, I'm not sure that the outcome would have been the same. So again, my thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you. All right. Chief, anything further on the update for Verdi fire protection?
No other updates on the recent wildfire activity, but I do have, we can move on to item number 2 if.
Yep, please.
Okay. Item number 2 is update on Verdi fire protection. I have been engaged with Duane Smith from CSD Engineering, and we've been discussing various options for the community. I want to mention that Verdi is a unique community in that it's a bit of a peninsula for us. It's on the extreme edge of our district, much like Wadsworth is. So we do have communities far away from our core services. So Palomino Valley is one example, again, Wadsworth and Verdi. So Verdi has never had a system by which we can distribute water for fire protection services. And the reason for that is it's always been developed as a rural community. So not only does it not have municipal water distribution, it doesn't have sidewalks and curb and gutter, doesn't have street lights, doesn't necessarily have libraries, I think, there, and it doesn't have a lot of municipal services that if you lived in Reno or in Sparks, you would have those services because you're in an urban area. So this being a rural area, the problem for us is not the lack of water, it's the inability to take that water and distribute it to a fire. So we have a series of ponds, we have the river running right through, we have the canal that's available for firefighting purposes. The challenge is, again, when you have a fire hydrant in a municipality, they're usually spaced 1,000 feet away. The fire pumpers carry 1,000 feet of hose. They connect to the hydrant. They lay out the hose, and they have almost an inexhaustible supply of water. We don't have that in Verdi. So even if we were to develop another fire station there, we would still be faced with the same problem of the firefighters will arrive and not necessarily have the amount of water that we need to suppress a home that when we get there is 40% involved. That is not just the water you're going to have on the fire engine and the water tender. It's going to take in the order of 50,000 gallons or more to suppress. And unfortunately, that is not available. So I'd like to invite Duane Smith to come down and maybe run through some options that we have discussed. One of the issues that we're faced with is obviously Reno in the blue area on your map has annexed most of the areas around Verdi, and we're left with the orange shaded areas. And so development is coming. And typically municipal water distributions systems are funded and imposed when development comes, not usually for any other reason. So we know that there is municipal water coming to Verdi, that Reno has some subdivisions that are being built close. And so it's on its way. When it gets there, I don't know. I do know that Reno's going to build a fire station in Verdi, so I question the logic of whether do we build a fire station and Reno also builds a fire station. That's something that we need to think about. So the problem that I've worked with Duane Smith on is how do we get water distributed to the extent that we can use it. If you're familiar with high-rise buildings, there's something called, in a high-rise building, it's called a standpipe, and they can be either dry or wet. A dry standpipe is simply a steel pipe that we can introduce water from the bottom and put water on the top floor. Firefighters will take a hose pack to the top floor and connect in, and the fire pumper will supply it up 10, 20, 30 stories, however that distance plays out. So my idea here, one of the ideas, is to take that skyscraper and lay it on its side and use a standpipe more as a horizontal system. So it would not be a municipal water distribution, it would be for non-potable water, and we would bury it underground and use hydrants every so often. Problem with that is it's going to be very, very expensive, and it could be very, very short term if municipal water comes in the next 5 years. So it might be a very, very short-term solution. Another system is to put dry cisterns and tanks throughout the community so that we would have in various locations through Verdi some pre-positioned water. The idea that Mr. Pitchford presented is of course, I appreciate all the suggestions coming from the community. But having one source of water throughout this entire orange area still leaves us with the problem of getting the water from point A to the fire at point B. So you may have 50,000 gallons of water somewhere. We still don't have enough hose, and we still don't have the capacity to make this work like a city where we have hydrants everywhere. We're still going to run water tenders from the rainmaker or from the canal or from the ponds. So if we want to improve fire protection, I firmly believe that we need to look at pre-positioned water in the form of cisterns or tanks. So I'd like to ask Duane Smith to talk a little bit about how we would do that and perhaps what it would look like from an engineering standpoint.
Good morning. For the record, Duane Smith, Director of Engineering for Washoe County. I just want to echo some of the comments that the Chief has made and also reaffirm the process that we've initiated based on the Chief's concerns and looking for opportunities to provide additional water in specific areas within Verdi to respond to these to the potential fire issues. So Chief reached out to me. We've had meetings, discussed, and what I'm doing is bringing to bear some of those technical elements associated with the Chief's ideas, which I think are very good. So we're working through a process to evaluate each of those alternatives as well as some other alternatives, identify what those potential construction constraints would be, identify what the benefits and what the cons might be associated with each of those alternatives, and also come up with the costing associated with each of those alternatives. So as we go through this process, I expect that I will be giving Chief this information, and we will be coming back and having further discussions. And certainly one of those pieces on the costing, the other thing I'm looking at is how we might come up with funding sources that might complement some of the Chief's ideas to help bring to fruition whatever that ultimate selected option is. So again, I just want to echo that we are dealing with some constraints in a rural community where we don't have the same type of fire infrastructure nor other types of infrastructure that we have present in more city developed areas. But we also recognize that there is a need to look at these options. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Smith. And we've talked about the parallel to this on a number of different issues. Stormwater, where there's a desire to have facilities in various parts of the county, but no mechanism to pay that. And I believe that it would be unfair to expect that the example would be for Spanish Springs to bear the cost of a stormwater utility somewhere else in the county. Conversely, we have the same issue here. We have issues in Verdi. I respect and I understand those issues completely, but I also have in Spanish Springs, as does Commissioner Lucy in Washoe Valley, as does Commissioner Herman in every place from Red Rock to Rancho Haven to Winnemucca Ranch to Palomino Valley, et cetera. I mean, the list goes on and on and on of places where this could be utilized. And so the only real fair way is to create special assessment districts for those areas, because that's a direct benefit for those people who have chosen to live outside of the municipal services. So as we look at this, special assessment districts are really the only fair way to deal with it, because in reality, the people in Spanish Springs want the same thing that the people in Verdi should have. And I understand completely all of those concerns, and I'm sure Commissioner Lucy would have exactly the same concerns in Washoe Valley, on a number of places. Franktown, Commissioner Herman, same scenario. I'm not sure whether there's any issues in District 1, but there may be up on the Mount Rose Highway, some places up there. Same scenarios. So if if we're going to investigate this for Verdi, we really need to put together a plan where we look at the entire county of those places that may want to have the creation of a special assessment district. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I absolutely agree with Commissioner Hartung. I think that the concern that I would have is that we have residents who pay for this fire service throughout rural Washoe County, unincorporated Washoe County. So as an example, we have residents in Collin Ranch who their neighbors don't pay for this because they're in the city of Reno, but you know how it is in Collin Ranch. It's county, it's city, it's county, it's city. And so we've got that same exact circumstance that we have here in Verdi. And not that I don't think Verdi should be protected, I do. I'm totally supportive of doing whatever we can to protect Verdi. But then we have the same concept in other areas throughout the county. So I think it's unfair to ask residents who live in the South Valleys to pay for Verdi. And that's what we would be doing. And these costs are significant. This is not going to be a cheap fix, if you will, to just find cisterns or tanks to put water, set water around out there. And, it's something that we need to do. There's no question that we have issues. This is a fire area. There's no question we're going to continue to have more fires. As this community grows, we need to do whatever we can to protect it. I think the second concern I have about Verdi is who protects the growth that's going on in the city of Reno. You know, there is, their access to getting to Verdi is not as quick as our access. And so who's going to protect their interests, the interests of the communities that they're starting to build out in Verdi as they annex more? So perhaps that's a question for the BCC rather than for the Fire Board, because that is an annexation question that we have a concern about. But these things are costing the citizens, the residents of Washoe County are costing them tax dollars to pay for these things. And so we really, this is a much bigger picture, I think, than just Verdi.
The unincorporated residents, right?
The
Yeah,
unincorporated.
it's costing the unincorporated residents are the ones bearing the brunt of this cost to not only if we were to put a system like this in Verdi or anywhere within the county, the unincorporated citizens would be paying for the cost to perfect City of Reno homes and utilize it through automatic aid. And that's because of the systems we have in place now. So I just don't know if this is the right answer at this time. Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it was also, I think this is noteworthy, it was also mentioned during public comment that after fire season, these temporary tanks, these holding tanks could be removed. I would submit to you that a house fire does not understand fire season.
True story.
And so consequently, you know, we take them down because fire season is over and somebody's house catches on fire, and then we're on the hook again because we removed a water supply after fire season.
Yeah.
So I think it has to be more of a permanent solution. If we're going to have water supplies in these outlying areas, it has to be a permanent solution. It has to be a 365 solution.
Agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Agreed. Commissioner Herman.
And that's exactly why, you know, we came up with the idea about rain for rent, because I realize, you know, at the end of the season there could be fires too, but the major possibility of a fire becoming a real problem is when it's very dry out and you got situations. I know that it was a suggestion, and it's temporary because we know it's going to be temporary. Anything we do there is going to be temporary until Tumwa gets the water system up there. And with the development, that's going to come right along. And that's why we thought we would be buying a little bit of time with the temporary water protection. So that was our idea.
Thank you, Commissioner Herman. All right. Seeing no further discussion on this action. Chief, item 8.3, please.
Item 8.3 is an update on volunteer program to include TMFPD's support of Gerlach. Perhaps the only good thing that's come out of the wildfire activity is the interest of people now wanting to serve, and we're getting lots of applications that are coming in for volunteers, and we're continuing to process them. In your board packet is a summary of where we're at, and we're continuing to grow the volunteer program in a big way. An update on the Gerlach program, we have 6 people that completed the EMT, and they're now progressing onto wildfire training. Very, very pleased to announce this, and I think this is very noteworthy. There was a 2,000-acre wildfire in Pershing County that just touched on Washoe County, but out of the Gerlach fire station came an immediate response of 5 volunteers. That is pretty impressive, I think, for such a little small town. And they did a pretty good job of keeping the fire in check along the road. They used the water tender to just lay down a wet line along the state highway. Obviously, the fire burned fairly big, but we're looking right now at a total of 8 volunteers plus an additional 2 employees. So in short order, we'll have volunteers who are wildland trained, EMT trained, able to respond to the ambulance. And I can't say enough about our retired Captain Ross Redding, who's gone up and engaged the volunteers and has been going up 4 times a week to make sure that we're doing things to get the volunteers up to speed.
Great. Any discussion on this at this time? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to accept Chief Report.
Move approval.
I have a motion by Commissioner Berkwickler, second by Commissioner Hartung. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Item 9.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll try to get through the rest of the items. I think they're fairly simple. 9 is discussion, approval, and authorization of the district support for the Board of County Commissioners' consideration of a countywide ban on target shooting, except at dedicated shooting ranges for the duration of the fire season. And Amy Ray, our Fire Marshal, will present this item.
Good morning, Commissioners. Amy Ray, Fire Marshal for the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District. As you have had previous discussion and is noted in the staff report, we've had several shooting-related fires in not only our area but adjoining jurisdictions. So I know the board had some interest in looking at proceeding with a countywide ban on target shooting. And one of our recommendations was for support of a ban on target shooting on county lands except at dedicated shooting ranges for the duration of fire season.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. I absolutely support this. I'm not even sure we shouldn't make it a permanent ban, because who knows what fire season looks like anymore, but certainly for the rest of the quote-unquote fire season until it starts raining and snowing again, I think this needs to be in place, with the understanding that we're not going to stop people. Some people are still going to go do it anyway, but at least if it's not legal, we have recourse. I mean, it's not legal in the city of Reno, and in Verdi, we had a fire that started in the city of Reno. But I still think we need to put this in place. I totally support this concept.
Commissioner Harton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Ray, did the BLM put the same ban down on their
The U.S.
lands?
Forest Service put a ban on federal lands, and
Okay.
BLM put restrictions regarding target shooting and ammunition on their lands.
What are those, so it's just,
It's
is it just steel
restrictions.
jacket?
Correct.
Okay, so that's the only restriction, is just steel jacket on BLM land?
And no exploding targets
And no
as well.
exploding targets?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, and so I think it's temporary. I think it will, we know that we've already had a fire that was started by this, unfortunately, and it's like many scenarios. It punishes the good players along
Yes,
with
it does.
the bad players, but it's too risky, unfortunately. And along this same line, I was recently informed that the Walmart on reservation land was selling fireworks right there by the Grand Sierra. And so, and in fact, I went in and asked one of the employees, and she said, "Oh yes, we had fireworks for a time." So it's one of those things where you have to control all of these variables as best we can, and I think this is an important step forward.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Seeing no further comments at this time or
Public
discussion.
comment.
Public comment. Do we have public? Yeah, we do.
We have one person signed in, Cliff Lowe.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Lowe.
For the record, Cliff Lowe, and I hope you won't count this time against your goal and the chief's goal of trying to keep these meetings down to an hour. I'd planned to come to a meeting to talk about this in more general terms anyway. I guess the question is for Truckee Meadows and for the county, is this all you can do? What are the effects of wildfire? There's the obvious things, property loss, including animals, potential for personal injury and death. We all have to breathe. Look what's happening to our air quality. But you also have death of wildlife and loss of habitat. There's a financial cost to taxpayers. It was mentioned earlier that one fire is costing $7.8 million. And perhaps the most insidious cost or effect is the diversion of resources, limited resources, and the fatigue factor for our firefighters and other first responders. And where are they going to be? They're going to be out fighting wildfires if there's an emergency closer to home. Is Washoe County talking to other counties? Other counties in Nevada, other counties in California? We're downwind from California. Are you talking to Governor Sandoval for bold action and asking Governor Sandoval to speak to Governor Brown in California? There was a TV report, and I believe one commissioner referred to it, that a vehicle towing a trailer and had a chain that started 7 fires along the highway. Are we talking to NDF? Are we asking our representatives to take action with the BLM and other federal agencies? Should you be considering declaring a state of emergency to have some restrictions beyond shooting for other potential recreational activities that could possibly cause fires? I implore you, I think this is a time to be creative, to look to use all forms of media, broadcast media, print media, social media, message boards. This is a time to be proactive, not only reactive. And you can't sit back. This fire season is well underway, and if you're going to have an effect, you need to act quickly. This can't, any action you might take shouldn't and can't drag on for months, because then it'll be too late. So I ask you to really think about the things that you can do, and to ask the county manager and the chief, if he can, to contact other people to try and reduce the causes of these fires, to mitigate the causes of these fires. Perhaps the BLM can go further in their restrictions on BLM land. Perhaps Representative Amodei can be called upon to seek help to cut this down. This is a time to go bold. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. All right. Do we have any further public comment? Seeing no further public, I'll bring it back to the board at this time. Looking for a motion. Yes.
I move that we approve and authorize the fire district to ban all target shooting except at dedicated shooting ranges for the duration of the fire season.
Second.
Looks like I've got our district attorney.
If I could, Mr. Chair. This is not a motion to ban anything from happening at this point. All this is a motion to recommend authorization of the district support of the Board of County Commissioners' consideration of a ban. So today's action isn't to ban anything.
I thought that's what I said, but okay, what he said.
Okay. So I have a motion by the Madam Vice Chair to support a ban of target shooting within the county, seconder agrees. Commissioner Hartung agrees. For all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Aye, or nay.
Okay, I have one nay and three motion passes, with Commissioner Herman being in the opposition. All right. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I propose a block vote, and I'm proposing that we put 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 in a block vote.
Okay, I have a motion for a 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Herman. Chief, would you want to read those items, please, really quick for us?
Absolutely. Item number 10 is recommendation that the Board of Fire Commissioners ratify fiscal year 2017 reimbursements from the Washoe County, Nevada OPEB Trust Fund to Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District for the cost of retiree health insurance. I just scribbled all over my, I can't read that. Premiums in the amount of $230,891.81. Item 11 is recommendation to approve change orders for additional work in the amount of $38,870.57 for the remodel of Galena Station 39 located at 4000 Joy Lake Road, Reno, Nevada, from Houston Smith Construction as defined in attachments. Item number 12 is recommendation to approve extra work authorizations in the amount of $21,480 for civil design services between Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District and CFA Incorporated to provide professional services as defined in the following attachments: extra work authorization dated May 10th, 2017, and the proposal for construction staking dated March 15th, 2017. Item 13 was approve the purchase of 135 self-contained breathing apparatus and associated equipment from MES in the amount of $842,275.19. And item 14 is discussion and possible approval to create 6 additional full-time fire paramedic positions.
Thank you, Chief. Any further discussion on any of these items? Do we have public comment signed in on any of these items?
No, sir.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We are on to item 15, Chief.
Item 15 is discussion and possible approval of the annual performance evaluation for Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District Fire Chief, including but not limited to discussion regarding results, goals, and objectives, and amendments to the terms of the chief's contract based on the evaluation to include possible changes to compensation and benefits. And I'll ask Dina Wiggins, our HR administrator, to expand on what the process was.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Is this on?
I think so. Nope, try it again.
Can you hear me?
Now you can.
Okay.
Got to speak right into it.
All right, thank you. This item is regarding the annual performance evaluation for Chief Moore. If you recall, back in the spring, the board approved a list of the evaluators for the 360-degree evaluation for the chief. And so this period of his annual evaluation is from April 2016 to April 2017. And the copy of the evaluation is attached to your board package, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Any questions from the board members at this time in regards to the chief's, the responses on the 360 evaluation or how the process? Commissioner Hartung.
Tina, can you tell me where is Chief Moore with respect to compensation compared to the fire chief in the city of Sparks and the fire chief in the city of Reno?
He is well within the salary range of either one of those.
Okay, so it's at least somewhat comparable.
Well, when you break it down and look at the amount of acreage, obviously Chief Moore's purviews has an extensive, larger amount of acreage to protect, and more fire stations. But he's still within that.
More fire stations in the city of Reno?
Oh, no.
Okay. Yeah,
Just
so-
the acreage.
So, yes, right. So what I was asking was the, a comparison between City of Sparks and City of Reno, and then Chief Moore, the compensation package that we give our chief versus what they give their chief.
It's well within a reasonable amount between all those.
Thank you.
Chief Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am fine with my compensation the way it is, so I would suggest to the board and recommend to the board that no adjustment is necessary.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chief, for that. All right. At this time, I'm looking for a motion to approve the annual performance evaluation.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Commissioner Hartung.
I would make a motion to approve the performance evaluation, but I would also make a motion, and it's very humble of the chief to do so, but I know we're in the process of renegotiating with our other bargaining units, and I think it's only reasonable that the chief at least get a COLA that's retroactive, and maybe base that on what we ultimately decide for the bargaining units as well. I think that's just, out of fairness. He works a lot of hours. I mean, he puts in a lot of time. I don't think I've ever called him, ever once, and he's not picked up the phone unless he's like in a meeting, and even then, he'll text me back immediately. And so, I mean, he's very responsive. I think the chief does a phenomenal job, given the circumstances and the breadth of the coverage that is required, as was mentioned earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I totally agree with Commissioner Hartung that the chief is top-notch and always there and always available, and is available to us at the drop of a hat. Plus, he's done a phenomenal job keeping everything organized throughout this ugly fire season. I believe all the other department heads are getting a 3% raise, and I would recommend that we give the chief that same raise. I appreciate that the chief is asking for no increase in his salary, but I think it's only fair that he get the same compensation that the rest of the department heads are getting.
A COLA. Agreed.
And I would agree with that. And just for further discussion, I'm going to support both of that motion. Is chief's duties expound just running the department and working with making sure operations and working staff and making sure that we have a functional, protected citizens within the unincorporated area of Washoe County. Chief was very integral in the part of protecting Northern Nevada and Nevada as a whole at our legislature in regards to fire issues and issues that come up during our legislative body. So his role is very extensive, and many times in off years it doesn't include legislation, but when it does, when legislative session is going on, Chief is very active and participates tremendously in that. So I think his roles are tremendous. It's not just the role of basic, but he acts as a multitude and wears a multitude of hats. So I would be supportive of that 3% raise as well. Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pretty sure that that my salary's already reflected the cost of living that was came into effect on July 1st. So that's already happened as just part of the process of cost of living increases for county employees also apply to me. So there's no reason to approve that for the reason that it's already happened. And two, I would just like to add that every conductor of an orchestra is only as good as the musicians that sit in the orchestra. And I just have to say that I've got a fantastic staff to support me and actually do the heavy lifting of putting out fires, from the battalion chiefs all the way down to the firefighter medics that we've just hired to my office staff. They all do a wonderful job. So I can't let an evaluation go by without at least thanking my staff for the great job they do to support me. And that's why the department works and works well.
Okay. Madam Vice Chair.
Okay, so you did receive the 3% that all the department heads and everybody else received at the same time. So, Commissioners, I think we should honor the chief's wishes and let it go that he does not get an additional raise, so that he is reflecting positively to his staff, that he's working within the same ranges that everybody else is. I appreciate the chief. Obviously, he could be sitting here saying, I need more, I'm working too hard. And we already know that he's getting a limited amount of sleep, so this whole fire season. So I appreciate the chief saying that, and I think we should honor his wishes.
Okay. Well, let me back up here. We have a motion and a second. So you're rescinding, you were the initial motion.
I
So
made the
you're
motion.
rescinding?
I'm rescinding my motion.
Okay. So we have a rescission of this motion?
Seconder agrees.
Seconder agrees. Okay, so your new motion would be?
My new motion would be to accept this annual performance evaluation with the qualifications that our chief is doing a superb job, and we appreciate everything he's done for us. And we will honor his wishes and move forward without an additional raise.
Great.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Madam Vice Chair Burke-Bigler, second by Commissioner Hartung. All those in favor
No,
signify by...
Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk.
I have
public
one
comment.
person signed in for public comment.
Thank you.
Sam Dene.
Mr. Dene.
Sam Dene, the Encyclopedia of Reno Government, the heart, soul, body, and mind of Reno government. That's me. I speak for 92% of the time, I speak for 300,000 people. Sometimes there are issues that are specific that I only intertwine with other people on their issues. But normally I speak for 300,000 people. And people forget when they're thinking of things, people forget that the purpose of, oh, he came down here to protect me, I guess. People forget that the purpose of government is to protect the citizens. So the number one at the ladder are law enforcement and firefighting, right there at the top. So they deserve more credit and more salary than the bureaucrats who already have bloated salaries. As a matter of fact, and I'm here to speak in favor, that Manny has done a phenomenal job of nodding their head, done a great job leading this situation with tremendous fires here and there and everywhere else. And I wish he would push a little harder on the Air National Guard, bringing those firefighting C-130s into the activities, the firefighting C-130s that I single-handedly directed the Air National Guard to get, and they finally obeyed my orders, and they have them, but I do not see where they're being used yet. Maybe they haven't had enough training. Anyway, he's He's doing a great job. I support his, actually, I support whatever he's asking for, and you wanted to give him more. He wants less. That's a good thing, I guess. But I have to say this. Somebody sent me, and I was astounded, even though I'm the encyclopedia of Reno government, I was astounded to see it. And granted, this was for the Reno employees, 1,400 full-time employees over there in Reno. But I have to assume that Washoe County is probably in the same mix, generally speaking. Does anybody even want to guess what the average salary and perks are for a worker over in Reno? $132,000 a year. $132,000 a year. Is there anybody in this room, well, maybe a few, is there anybody in this room who makes that much money? I don't even think the guys up here make that much money. Anyway, something needs to be done about the salaries in our community. And I don't want to be a curmudgeon, I hate being that, but when I saw that the average salary, and it tops up somewhere around $350,000 and goes on down to $60,000 at the bottom, $50,000 at the bottom. And anyway, I'm trying to put my support of the chief in perspective, that he's doing a great job. If I was up there analyzing the salaries, I would have motions going right and left saying we need to take a look at all of the salaries. And I know you people don't like to hear this, but something is really out of control when the average worker over, and they do a great job, don't get me wrong, the average worker over in Reno, and I assume Washoe also gets $132,000 of taxpayer money dedicated to his career or her career. $132,000 is out of control. That is wrong. I'll close out by saying once again, great job, Chief, and I support, of course, I sort of stepped on my own feet by saying that, but as it stands now, I support his continued working for our community and for his salary.
Thank you, Mr. Dene. Any further public comment?
That was it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. All right. Seeing no other further public comment, I have a motion by Madam Vice Chair, second by Commissioner Hartime. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Chief, we are on to item 16.
Item 16 is Commissioner Fire Chief's announcements. Just one announcement, Mr. Chairman. The meeting with the Verdi community has been, we've notified 888 addresses in Verdi for a public meeting here on July 26th. I believe it starts at 7 o'clock. We'll talk about the Lakeview fire, and then, but more importantly, I want to talk about those issues that we've discussed at this meeting of how we'll try to improve the water system in Verdi.
Great.
It'll be right here in the commission chambers.
Yep.
July 26th. Hopefully all 888 people don't show up.
Well, I've already planned on being here, and I've been asked to be here in attendance, so I will be here as well that day for that meeting. So we will be here to discuss all the issues that of the Verdi citizens. Any further comments by commissioners? Yes. Madam Vice Chair.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a point of asking the district attorney on where are we on the GID study? I know that we approved 2 hours of work, more than 2 hours of work on that, so
Does the answer in progress help?
that helps. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Hartine, Commissioner Herman, nothing? You know, and I brought this up earlier, but I would like for a future agenda, and just for a point, this is some housekeeping and the proper time to do this, but I would like a future agenda item for run cards and dispatch for all district, you know, and how that works. And I think Commissioner Hartung and I would be interested in that information and how that dispatch is working and different things like that throughout the county, especially for Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District. All right. Seeing nothing further from any of the commissioners, we will close item 16. Chief, item 17.
Item 17 is not necessary, Mr. Chairman. We may move on to item number 18.
All right, item 18. Madam Clerk, public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First up is Patrick Schrickler, and he's followed by Sam Dene.
All right. Mr. Schrickler?
Mr. Schrickler?
Pat Schrickler? All right.
Sam Dene.
Mr. Dene.
Sam Dene, the heart and soul, body and mind. We're talking right now on the general public comment at the end of the fire meeting. And I have to point out, this is the craziest thing going on in the whole world. Not the crazy, I've seen a lot of crazy stuff. A month and a half ago, I was wrongfully threatened to be removed from a meeting. What I wanted to do was perfectly legal, honest, and fair. And the county commission, in unison, allowed me to be threatened to have to leave the meeting. So I filed an open meeting law complaint. Seems like a small thing, but when you violate the open meeting law against a citizen, especially against Sam Dene, the specialist on public comment, and I don't have any animosity to those people up there. I'm just trying to point out what has happened. I filed an open meeting law complaint with the Attorney General down there. And the problem was that the agenda was written wrong, and within days, they corrected it thanks to my open meeting law complaint. And what it was that is as simply as I can put it, is that a citizen can only speak on action items. And they didn't have any comments about that situation back then. Since then, almost within days, they totally recreated the agenda. I'm calling it the Sam Dene commemorative Washoe County agenda. And you look at it, and it's nicely done. The font's nice. I give kudos to the people who put this together, and I know it's silly giving kudos to somebody for writing the agenda. Well, it is important to know what's on the agenda and understand the agenda is supposed to be followed. Now, on every single item, if you look in there, it says, not every single one, but virtually every, capital letters for possible action. That should say, in small letters, thanks to Sam Dene's open meeting law, we are now obeying the law. And I don't want to belittle this. I don't want to drag this out because there's much bigger fish to fry. The point is that the Attorney General, a month and a half later, hasn't even gotten back to say, thank you, Sam, or we're doing something. What is going on? Have you told the Attorney General to lose contact with Sam? Normally you would hear back and say, hey, we're doing it, and by the way, they've already fixed what you wanted them to do. Not a word from the Nevada Attorney General. Something's wrong with that. As I close out, speaking of stepping on pea ants, here's this Reno Gazette. The Reno Gazette Media Mouse Wacko Freaks. The Wacko Freaks. Look at that. Full page. The community's things going wrong. The train trench is bankrupt, everything, and they spent all that page on a $10,000 attack job on our beloved mayor over there. So the Reno Gazette Wacko Freaks do not like Hillary Sheevy. This is living proof right here. $10,000 pea ant situation.
Mr. Dene.
Is that it?
Thank you, Mr.
That's it already?
Cliff Lowe.
Okay, thank you for listening, and thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Lowe.
That's a tough act to follow. I want to take less than 3 minutes to put an exclamation point on my earlier comments, that each of you ask yourself individually what you are doing to help reduce the number of wildfires that are taking place. What actions are you asking? There's a fire marshal from Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District. Has she been asked to really think hard as to what can be done to try and reduce the number of fires? There's so many resources going into fighting the fires and so much danger from them. Have the county staff been asked, the county manager? Have the individuals going to send out an email to everybody saying, do you have any great ideas? This is not a time to sit back, and I'm not up here to grandstand. I have no reason to grandstand. I'm just concerned about all the fires that are taking place. I'm asking each and every one of you to ask yourself, what is it going to take? I think all 4 of you live in the unincorporated counties. One of your homes might already have been threatened. What will it take for you to actually try and take some bold action with other governmental agencies and involve them, both other counties, the state, and the federal government, to try and reduce the number of wildfires here? I'm asking you and pleading with you to exercise some of the leadership that you were elected to provide and see what can be done to reduce the number of fires. Thank you.
Any further public comment? All right, seeing no further public comment, we will adjourn the meeting. We are adjourned. Ladies and gentlemen, we will start the county commission meeting here in about 5 minutes. So we will try to start promptly at